it was always like, once you got to that big table, what in the world is it? You think you're there, and they always have one more thing up their sleeve to make you believe, no, you aren't there yet. So I learned a lot off of these guys. I still don't have a left shift map, maybe someday. Who's next?
Okay, I'll tell you my first flight at the Nationals was in 1974. I think the way it was, the first couple of days you flew CNTs, which is flying tasks to get qualified. And I remember the first morning we were going to fly, it was pretty windy. So I flew in a balloon club, so I told all the members, I said, might as well stay in, it's going to be too windy, and I was laying in bed. And back then, Indianola had a radio station, and they was always broadcasting what was going on with the balloons, and I was laying there, and the radio station says, well, there's some balloons flying. I thought, my God, there are balloons flying, it's windy. I said, I jumped up, and I called the crew, I said, there's balloons flying. So here we're clearing Carlisle, so we head to Indianola, and it is a little windy, but we had to check in and get our bag. And we decided to go out and fly, and the wind was out of the north. And so we couldn't quite figure out how to get line. This is my first flight into Simpson College. And so I had one of the guys, we went out to a farm where we thought was close to take off. We had no eyeballs, nothing there. He went in and borrowed the phone to call flight service to get a direction. So we kind of had a direction, and we thought maybe we was kind of in the right place. So we decided to take off, and it was very windy. Of course, we burnt the skirt, and I took a first-time rider who was wanting to get him in the club. And I always remembered when they said, when you drop that baggie, my first baggie that I ever dropped, I said, boy, they really float. And so here we take off out north of Indianola, and we're coming in, and by God, we're coming right into Simpson College. I couldn't believe it. And we're coming right in toward the water tower and everything. I said, I can't believe we're coming, going to be this close. So then I always remembered, they said, boy, these bags really float. And so I got in there and I thought, well, about Iowa Street, I ought to throw this baggie. It's going to float a long way. Well, Iowa Street's probably 3 blocks from the X. So I went ahead and threw the baggie at Iowa Street, and it landed about on Iowa Street. So that was my first lesson on bags. And I was lucky enough, I think that was my only flight, but I was lucky enough that qualified me. You couldn't believe back then when you could be a mile off and you could still get qualified and get in. Them first days, if you got within 500 feet or 100 feet of the target, you was great. Nowadays, you got to be within 2 or 3 inches to be good. So, and I was lucky that first year I got 12th place. Still couldn't believe it, and really didn't know what was going on in ballooning either. So, good place to learn.
Gosh, I hate to follow all that up. I'd like to just talk about my first experience in Indianola. I actually learned to fly in Texas in the winter. Started in January of 1977. And we decided, my dad and I, to attend the Nationals as non-competitors. But we did our training. We had hired a former Goodyear blimp pilot, Don Woolley, to come back down and live with us. And you just don't fly in Texas much in the winter. It's windy. But Don came and lived with us, and we had dinner together. We talked about ballooning. He did all my ground training at, at dinner, eating at the house. But we did our training with a Raven Velcro top balloon. And most of our flights were made with rip-out landings. We would learn to rip out as much as 50 feet above the ground. Don wanted us to learn that we could survive that. and we, every flight that we made through my commercial training was a rip-out landing. We didn't do our first stand-up landing until we got to Indianola. But we got to Indianola, And the first flight was there at Simpson College, and I can still remember being down at that main lower field. And if you haven't been to Simpson College since in the last few years, it's just hard to believe that we ran a national championship there. The fields just look so incredibly small. The trees are incredibly big. But I can remember laying out there, and I can the loudspeaker coming on, and they say, well, you know, Bruce Comstock is coming over, and you'd be looking around, and you know, oh yeah, there's Bruce, kind of on the other side of the trees, but you know, he was closer than most because you know, they're Billmore office coming over. Well, you look around, he may be on the other side of the trees, but that first day of competition, I didn't see one baggie land in the field. But yeah, I think that was pretty typical. Even the year that I won, many times if you were in the field, you were good. So it's changed a lot now with gravity drops. But the first flight I made, we took off, and I had my sister flying with me, and we flew off, and we were just having the experience of flying in someplace new, and we drifted over. The winds were, it was an evening flight. We were drifting over into a pasture, and we come down and we're landing, and I've got the crew there. And the first thing I did at about 10 feet above the ground is pull the top out of the balloon. And sure enough, the balloon collapsed completely around me. And because I had never experienced a stand-up landing. We learned fairly quickly that you didn't have to rip out before you landed. And my dad and I kind of switched off some flights there. But watching these competitors fly, it kind of got me into the bug of flying. So I started my competition the next year, and I think I finished 21st the first year. And then, you know, there was a lot of pressure. And so in 1978, I came back as a non-competitor. 1979. Came back as a non-competitor. But then in 1980, my sister told me that they weren't going to come crew for me unless I was competing. So that's when I started competing again. Winning a championship that early, that inexperienced, there was a lot of luck involved. In fact, I started out that last flight, I was in 10th place. So there was a lot of movement in the standings that last day. It was quite an experience. Of course, we had a rain out that last morning, and so we had kind of a short nationals that year. But it was a great experience flying with Bruce and Rob, and you know, I recognize a fair number of the people from the earlier years out here. Jim Thompson was always there's even a few observers here. So it was a great experience flying at Indianola. There are so many stories, we could talk for hours.
We'll give you a chance to talk a little bit more. I would like to do one thing, is that there are a number of national and world champions sitting in the audience that didn't do it in Indianola, but really need to be recognized. Would you all stand up, please? David? Who else is here? The kid?
That's our Johnny.
Johnny?
Stand
The
up.
kid?
Stand up.
Who else? And these were people who became national champions after Indianola, but the Indianola years were a fun time for all of us. We could all tell stories, but they'd all give us headaches.
You had to bring your own bug spray
Yeah.
for the dorms, If you want an air conditioner, you better bring your own air conditioner.
And if you wanted anything else, you had to bring it with you too. So what I'd like to do is now open this up to questions aimed at any one of these gentlemen up here. Yes, sir.
Question for Danny. The tasks that are being flown now were not even thought of back when you got your chance.
Thank God.
What kind of tasks did you fly?
Well, basically, we were doing either hare and hounds, or primarily hare and hounds, or target tasks, but they were much less complex than they are today, and require personal opinion, I think the tasks today require a great deal more skill than what was required of us then. Of course, I'll deny that. Don't ever repeat it. The hare and hound, I seem to recall actually having to land in the field on the hare and hound. And if you could take out the hare's burners, you were right on. In my case, if I got within a block, I thought it was darn good. So that's the primary. They were much simpler tasks. Now, compare that also, or remind yourself that, I'm flying a 50,000 cubic foot balloon with a 2-barrel on it, each barrel, Mr. Winker, kicking out 2.25 million BTUs. So when I got to the 4-barrel, that was a quantum leap. Compare that to what you're flying today. Your equipment is better today, and you can take a guy with like Bruce's skill, add the ability of the equipment to use his skill, you've got some awesome flying.
As far as burner, I gotta stand up, I can't sit and talk. As far as burner power goes, I learned on a really good balloon, which was a Raven. I mean, it was the best, one of the best at the time probably, but it had a burner, and on a good day, we put out about 4 million liters per hour. And on a bad day, sometimes it got exciting, and the burner also flamed out a lot, so you had to stay on your toes, but it was state of the art. And before I stopped competing, after 20 years of competition, more than 20 years of competition, I was flying a balloon that had 18 times the burner power, which is bizarre when you start to think about it. So I could almost not pay attention to what I was doing flying. It made it a lot easier. But learning on a balloon with a really weak burner is a really good thing to do, because you either get good as a pilot, you give up ballooning, or you die.
Three options.
Questions? Yes?
What do you think about the transition from the Indianola days? You had a paper map and you had maybe a good compass. Today, a balloon basket may be full of computers, multiple GPSs, God only knows what other secret devices. What do you think about that transition and what it's done for sport? Anybody?
Listening to what they were saying, I wanted to make a comment about some of the differences, because when we moved at Indianola, most of us that had been there for several years, the layout of the map was good. We knew all the intersections. We knew what they looked like. We knew where they were. We knew the landing sites, the launch sites. So flying in Indianola was relatively simple. Moving from Indianola to Baton Rouge was an extreme change. The layout, the land, the swamps, the alligators. Joe Hartzell and I flew his little Cessna airplane down 3 months in advance and flew over the area. And we said, we are going to have to come and spend some time here. And so we got the competition map, and we spent close to a week mapping out all the intersections, finding launch sites, finding landing sites, and kind of plotting and flying the area. And the change, what we found is that you had to do a lot of homework to really compete at the top level. All the homework that was done in Indianola over 10 years or more, we had to shrink down into a much smaller time. And of course, we didn't get into the electronics age until, when did we start GPS now?
The
91? Yeah. So that made things a lot simpler, because now you could kind of, you had some device that you didn't have to have quite as good a map skills as you did in the prior years. But there's a lot of difference there.
You know, Maury, part of that is anytime we have a competitive sport, regardless of what it is, one of the big benefits of competition is that it helps us to develop some new technology. That includes things like the coatings on the fabrics that we see now, the use of Kevlar, the changing of baskets to wear flat aluminum baskets, the safety factors that are there. Because when we started in the rule book, you weren't even allowed to carry a radio, let alone any navigation devices. They were strictly prohibited. But through any competitive sport, including this one, I think it has driven a lot of innovation for both safety and also the ability to make it more affordable, although the prices seem to be, I know, a bit high. But I think that that comes naturally with any type of sporting event that you ever do. So while I frankly miss it, just going out there with a compass and a pie ball and a paper map and a plotter, it's not there anymore. And it is some of that innovation, and we just accept it and move on with it.
At the first U.S. Nationals that I attended, I vividly remember Don Picard running across the field, grabbing a ground inflator that was being used by one of his balloon owners to inflate his balloon. He took that fan and flung it off and said, "That is an unnatural device. You flat." We've gone from that to some rather sophisticated devices, and you're right, in the first few years you were not allowed any unnatural device in your basket, or from the card's viewpoint, to even inflate the balloon. Although when you mentioned Don Picard, wasn't he the one who used the airplane to inflate his balloon in Reno? Well, that doesn't count. So, any more questions?